So it's Yellowstone. I know you watched it.
Oh, I absolutely did.
What did you think, though?
Yellowstone?
Yes.
I just like
I
keep
am
looking
so
something.
tired of Casey's wife having stuff happen to her.
Hey, man. What? That lady can't go to the store without something happening to her, you know?
She lost that baby and I just went,
Yep. About par for
Here
that
goes
course.
that.
Yeah. Here she is. She's going to be just dreary and, oh, woe is me for the whole season.
poor
I'm like,
pitiful me.
yep, whole season full of that.
I was kind of disappointed. I thought there would be more.
Yeah, no, I did too.
Wow.
Yeah,
The
more
first one.
like
I know.
sneakiness.
Well, they do that all season long, and then get you come back and then wait till like the
Thought something big's
6th,
gonna
7th, 8th
happen.
season before it really kicks in.
Yep, no, I don't disagree. I was very disappointed myself.
Yes.
Except for her running into that buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't see that thing there?
It was huge.
Of course, it's all her fault. They kind of, like she's just driving when she shouldn't have been driving. I don't know.
She should have let Tate drive. He's what, 14, 15 by now?
He looks like he's like 60. That other boy, the boy who's the little ranch hand guy, he's like 25 now.
Yeah.
He's
I
like,
know.
he comes out, he's like, hey, you remember me? I'm like, this kid was 12 last season, you know? Anyway, teenagers grow up very fast. It's like changes the whole thing, you know?
I told him to quit
That's awkward when you change like that on
Yes.
a TV show.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
like,
My favorite TV show of all time, Lost. One of the characters, Walt, he was like 9 when it starts. And then like season 3, all of a sudden he's like 25. And I'm like, he's like, hey guys. And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. It messes up the whole thing for me. I think they kind of wrote him out because of that. But anyway, yeah, it's just,
take a huge growth.
it's very strange when that happens.
Well, Peter Brady wrote a song about when it's time to change in the Brady Bunch.
Did he?
Y'all remember that?
No, it wasn't allowed back then.
Yeah, his voice was changing, they were supposed to sing in this
Oh, he's like,
competition, and so then they wrote a song about it and he would squeak.
Okay, that's pretty funny.
I love the Brady Bunch.
Uh-huh.
I
I don't even remember the Brady
I was
Bunch.
obsessed with the Brady. I watched it.
I mean, I remember like there was a maid, there was a dog, there were some kids.
No, I know, I can tell you every
I
Oh.
can tell you this.
What's the pigtail?
Cindy.
Cindy.
No, that's not the one. What's the name of that?
Marsha.
Marsha. That's the, yeah, exactly. There you go. That's about all I remember.
So Wes, I did it in 10th grade or something.
Uh-huh.
I know my boy was deep, but evidently he was changing or something. I had his teacher, and he was like, everybody needs, kids don't want me to talk. No way, you don't want me to talk. I was kind of shy of her, and I was
I
nervous.
was saying, well, you're wrong, you believe I didn't know.
I just started holding the roll,
I thought they were
and say,
kidding.
Eddie, first day.
Here.
Every day.
That's it. It was over with.
Okay, don't do it.
I know.
As a teenage boy, you have no control over that. It's just like, yep. That's very funny. Very funny. That's a good one. Where's Dwight at? Is he out cooking already or something? Oh, okay. Oh, boy. That is funny. That's a good one. A meeting of the minds. When Tara and I, we come together, we have a meeting, we just call it the meeting of the mind. I can only use that joke, she's not here. Okay.
Were you
All right.
baby sick?
Yeah, I mean, like, they're not 100%, let's just say, so.
If one gets something, then the other one gets it.
And the whole thing, like, where it's like Thanksgiving week, like, you don't want to get somebody sick this week, you know, then they're all messed up, you know, so. Where's Lisa McCarley at?
She's out there bumping them gums.
She's in that meeting.
Another mind.
She's in that meeting. If there's a meeting of the mind, she's there.
Yeah, mind up.
She's gonna miss our. I mean, we got a couple good ones today, so we'll see. We'll see if she makes it back in time. She better. More than ever, just keep in mind as we go on today that all the opinions, I'm gonna lay them out, but like we have some opinions in some of this interpretation of these verses today. So just keep in mind, these are mine. It's okay if you have your own, or if you go with a third or fourth version, that's okay as well. Just throwing that out there.
So it's okay for us to be wrong.
That's exactly right. You can be as wrong as you want to be. I will say there's one of the verses that we're covering today is one of the hardest translated verses in the New Testament. It really is. I read like 25 different versions, and I still don't know what to think. How about that? That's pretty good. I don't really have a conclusive thought on it. I don't know. It is a very difficult verse, so we'll see. But we will be on page 116 in our ESV scripture journals. If you're following along in your Bible, we're in chapter 20, verse 11. Like I thought we were in verse 11 last week. That joke. Okay. But yeah, Jesus will appear today to Mary Magdalene, or Mary Magdalene and the risen Jesus.
Look, man, we're having class.
You're gonna sing him come down the hall.
Uh-huh. You set him straight? Everything's good now?
Practicing.
Okay, there you go. That's good.
At 10:30, 11 o'clock comes early.
That's right. He's got a song in his heart.
What verse did you say?
116.
16.
Yeah, it's towards the bottom on 116, I think.
Oh, we
Yeah.
don't make you look at.
So we're kind of working our way down. Everybody keeps saying there's only like 3 pages left in this book. How long can this last? A long time.
116 now, this is 4th week, so.
At least. How many times are you going to say page 116? Okay. There's not that many words on the page.
That's what we thought you just mistakenly called out the wrong page.
Did he say 116 again? Anyway, one quick announcement is December the 3rd, which is a Saturday, we're having our Christmas party. Everyone's invited. You can bring whoever you'd like.
Saturday?
I thought it was the
No,
second.
it's December the 2nd.
Friday.
Back up.
You gotta
Announcements.
get yourself in a heap of help in a problem.
Is it December?
What is December 2nd?
Let's FaceTime Tara.
It is the second.
I'm gonna be made fun of here.
I mean, we can show up Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
Friday, attention! We have announcements. Friday, December the 2nd is the correct date. This is wrong. I guess I put that there too, so I'm just arguing with myself here. But yeah, December the 2nd, Friday night. It's going to start at 6:30. Bring anyone you'd like. You can. I would love if we had some like prospects of the class kind of thing. That's even better, you know. We'll show them that, you know, we're not all stuffy Baptists, you know. It's just Dorsey. Hey, no, just kidding. But no, anybody's invited. Yeah. Come on.
Bring a present.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Let's get into that. 15 to 20. If you want to go 75, that's cool. Just mark it. Mark that one. We'll keep an eye out for that one. But yeah, no limit. Just go crazy. No, I'm just kidding. 15 to 20, something like that. Because if you say 10, it's hard to find something for 10. You know, you got to be a pretty good shopper, and I'm not. You know, so 15 to 20ish. But
Do we wanna start a list of what people wanna bring?
that's a great idea. Yes. As far as the foods go, I think last time we just kind of said, bring what you want, and I thought it worked out pretty well. But some people have to have a list. So we're gonna. Tracy's in charge of the list, and we will go from there. So.
Well, we need to know a direction to go. I don't want to bring pork and beans that you gotta have a ribeye.
Every party involves pork and beans, Dwight. So you're safe on that. No, that's right. That's what I'm talking about. Ain't nothing wrong with pork and beans.
Well, that's music to my ears.
That's also
Where are you saying this?
kind of like a finger foods or sides or things. If you want to fix an entree or something, hey, knock yourself out, you know. But I think probably we'll have more than enough of, you know, just something you'd expect in a Christmas party, walk down a line kind of thing. Or if you just want to bring desserts, that's fine too. Whatever. Anyway, hint, hint, Christy Dabbs, the dessert maker.
Yes.
We own it.
So, yeah, and I was serious in the text there. Everybody has to leave by 10. Just throwing that out there.
Let me just
All right.
say, Chris, if you're gonna do that
Except
little
Scott, I'm
vegetable
leaving
tray,
him.
try to get it before you head to the party.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
So remember, Christy Dabbs, it starts at 5:30.
5:30.
Yes.
Scott will pick her up. We'll get on time.
See, that's good. That's a good joke. That's good.
Yeah, I will.
Very fun.
What's our time today?
For everybody else, 6:30. For Christy, 5:30. Okay. So,
Need that. I appreciate it.
you're welcome.
She's doing better.
You were here today. That's good. Very good. Did you make it in time for the movies the other night?
Yeah, they were there before we were.
That's unbelievable. Okay.
What is this new
I
Christy?
just keep
Yeah.
surprising
Who is
myself.
this lady?
Usually that starts like January 1st.
I was gonna say, not even years.
By January 7th, it's gone. You know.
Yeah.
I should get her to start, so maybe it'll stick this time.
That's good.
I'm
That's
trying
very
to
fun.
do it for myself.
Yeah, poor Jeff. We're going to include Jeff in the prayer list this morning. So, previously in John, we've been in chapter 20. In chapter 20, Sunday morning, before the sun comes up, Mary Magdalene finds the tomb open. And as we discussed, she's there with others, but John's focus is on her. Peter and John race to the empty tomb as she gives them the news and finds that Jesus is not there. John, seeing the burial cloths, the grave clothes, believes. Pisteo, we talked about. And it said he saw and believed. At that point, they didn't understand that he had to rise from the dead. They haven't got to that yet, but John still believes. And then we end that section with this obvious transitional statement of, then the disciples went back to their homes. And I'm gonna just as we read this morning, just kind of keep your minds open, because we have a lot of interesting things we're going to cover. But keep your minds open to the idea of when this was written in original Greek, in Koine Greek, it would have been without punctuations. So keep in mind that sentence, although it's at the end of that, works so much better, in my opinion, at the beginning of the next part. We'll just keep that in mind as we go. We'll see. Because I like the argument that it goes together with today's paragraph rather than last week's. So we're going to open in prayer, and we'll jump right in. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for bringing us in here this morning. We ask you that you open our minds as we study your word this morning. Challenge and change us, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. All right. Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene. I'm going to stick 2010 in there, but we're going 11 through 18. Then the disciples went back to their homes, but Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. And as she wept, she stooped to look into the tomb. And she saw 2 angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." Having said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and that he had said these things to her. Okay, so we'll start off easy and we'll get hard. But so we start off with this transitional verse, which for me works so well with that verse 11. On the one hand, you have the 2 disciples; they went back to their homes, but Mary, on the other hand, stood weeping. I feel like those just go so well with each other. John always contrasting things. He contrasts the reaction of the disciples with the reaction of Mary. They went, she returned, or she stayed standing, at the tomb. Some people say, why didn't John tell Mary Magdalene about him believing, about his faith? Of course, there's nothing to say that they didn't even, they didn't even speak to some degree. Who knows? But a lot of people put that in there. Why did they not say that? She's making fun of me for saying the wrong date. Anyway, so she's standing outside the tomb. She's crying. She's weeping. This is not like Jesus weeping and Jesus wept, where it's just a single tear. This is just like that same scene where those women at the tomb of Lazarus were wailing and crying audibly. Was the word that we put in there? Cleo. Yeah, Cleo. But so she stoops. She looks into the tomb, exactly like John did when he got there in verse 5. Verse 5, in stooping to look in, he saw the linen cloths, but he didn't go there. Mary Magdalene then witnesses the 2 angels in white. And for me, I probably can say this like 3 times, but he's just like, she's out doing this and that, and oh yeah, there's these 2 angels there. It's just like another day. It's such a huge event. The way like Matthew describes it, and Luke, they go into these awesome details of the dazzling clothing and stuff, and John's just like, and then there's these 2 angels there, and I'm like, man, he's more worried about where they're standing than anything else, But so one is at each end of where Jesus has been laying, and they're sitting at this point. And this rules out a lot of different things, which is very neat. Sometimes in the details that he gives, it gives us more of a background of what's going on. So in this situation, we actually have a conclusive idea of what kind of tomb this is, which is very neat. He's already told us that it was cut into the side of the rock. It was a rich man's tomb. It has a stone rolls in front of it, and all these different things. And in this description, let's just say there's 6 common types of tombs at this time, and it rules out 5 of them, which is pretty unique. So there's so many different structures in the tombs in the first century, where you'd have kind of like this chair where people would actually go in and mourn, or they would do different things. Well, Jesus is laying there, where he was laid, and now the angels are sitting on each side where he was laid. Shows the only kind of setup, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce this word, but it's called an arcosolium. It shows that there's a bench along the wall. And if you've ever seen any pictures of inside the garden tomb, that's exactly what kind of tomb it is. There's this bench that runs along the wall. It's like 2 foot high, and it's clearly man-made, but it's got this big open area in the middle, and that's what kind of tomb Jesus would have been in. Lazarus as well, probably, but John and Peter's attention is on the grave clothes, where Mary's attention is on the 2 angels. Mark 16 says, "And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed." Talking about the women. And Luke's is, while they were perplexed about this, behold, 2 men stood by them in dazzling apparel. And then Matthew's in Matthew 28 is, "And behold, there was a great earthquake." I don't know why you're not going to remember that part, but there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes white as snow. That's very Matthew there, where he's detailed. But so there's these 2 angels. They're dressed in these shining white garments here at the tomb. They're sitting in the tomb on this bench where Jesus' body was. What an awesome scene, One thing I will say, we're not going to have enough time to have a full discussion on angels, but a little bit about angels. They're not always dressed like this. They're not always dressed up in their, Sunday morning clothes like this. They dress as us, I think that's a good way to keep that in mind. Sometimes they appear just like everyone else. But there's one thing that John's pointing out here. It's that God's power has invaded the scene. There is supernatural events going on here beyond our understanding. I think that's an excellent way to look at this whole 10 through 11, or 11 through 18 passage here. It's just supernatural events going on with a lot of mystery. How about that? That's even better. They say to Mary Magdalene, "Woman, why are you weeping? Why are you overly crying, sobbing, extreme? Not just why are there tears in your eyes?" All 4 Gospels, the angels ask the women the same question. She responds with the same line she told Peter and John. "They've taken away my Lord, my Kyrios, and I do not know where they have laid him." Mary was doing, so I already said that. But these angels are there, and I feel like, for us, the reason why they're there, I'll just say it for me, the reason why they're there is because they are essentially messengers. I think that's the right way to look at it. And they're there, delivering the good news. When Jesus was speaking to Nathanael in chapter 1, he says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." And that verse and the Matthew verse, those are 2 very good verses to bring up side by side. "For an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone." We see where the angels live. We see where angels reside. I mean, it says it over and over in the Bible, but in these 2, almost accidentally, they say that angels reside in heaven. I think that's one thing to know about angels. Are they here among us? Yes, absolutely. We're going to have a couple good verses that support that too. But the only other time it was mentioned in John, angels is in chapter 12. There's that voice from heaven that calls out, talking to Jesus, and the crowd that stood there and heard it said that it thundered, and others said, "An angel has spoken to him." Those are the only mentions of angels in John's gospel. But an angel, the definition of it is a messenger or an envoy. But it is used 175 times in the New Testament. And only 3 in John. 7 of those times, though, are translated apostles, which is a very neat understanding of that word, because they're messengers. They're delivering God's message. For those of you who watched the Chosen this week, it's at the part where he sends them out, to go out as his envoys, as his angels. It's a very unique use of that word. I read this one thing talking about, and I don't know if I put it in my notes or not. I probably didn't. But it's more of like their title rather than who they are. They are the delivery man. They are the messenger. So Jesus sends out his angels, his messengers, his apostles, just like God sends, just like the Father sends his out from heaven. A traditional Jewish understanding of the word is one who announces or tells, but they're still telling that message that they were given. They don't technically come up with their own thoughts or ideas. They are delivering messages on behalf of God. Another definition is a supernatural being created by God to serve him, often functions as a messenger. And another good one that I found here was someone, natural or supernatural, who carries a message, perhaps fulfilling other representative functions. Because they are somewhat of an ambassador. They are somewhat of a person who goes out like an envoy and talks to others. A good verse here that I like is 2 Corinthians 12 says, "So to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from being conceited." The word there is actually angel. We don't know it like that because we don't see it in the same way they use apostles either, which is angels. But that verse actually uses, it's a very common verse, Paul talking about the thorn in his flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me. It's actually an angel of Satan. So angel doesn't necessarily mean from God. It just means one who's delivering. Sometimes you can use it in a different. It doesn't have to be supernatural. Let's just say. But I've confused myself on that one. So in the New Testament, the existence of angels, just like that of demons, is completely taken for granted, and it's just another day. It's just another verse. It's just there's angels there. They can intervene and intercede on behalf of humans. Angels protect the righteous so many times. They dwell in heavens, so many different verses. They act as God's warriors. They worship God. In the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, they work as dealing with the dead. The word is psychopomps, but that's their job. As you die, they take you to where you go to some degree in that story. The resurrection of Jesus features angels telling the woman, I already read that. But one other mention of angels, which John just throws in there, which we've talked about, was in chapter 5, where they're at the pool of Bethesda. And it talks about the old Jewish myth where, the angel stirs up the waters. That's the other mention, which again, he's just mentioned, there's an angel that comes down and he stirs up the waters, So, angels and demons are mentioned, as a matter of fact, by the Old Testament and New Testament authors because they know. They are more informed than we are. Here's a few very good verses for me. I've got about 6 or 7 here, but these are all, I think they all give us a good look at angels in different ways. Hebrews 13, "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware." That is a good one for me. We could be speaking to angels and not even be aware of it. And it happens throughout the Bible. Just throwing that out there. Psalm 91, "For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways." Again, being protectors. Exodus 23, "Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared." Colossians 1, "For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him." Now, that doesn't specifically call out angels, but in Christianity, not all Christianity, strangely enough, but in Christianity, we believe that angels are created beings. This is a good verse to support that. Many other denominations of similarities to Christians don't believe that, So just throwing that out there. Luke 15 says, "Just so, I tell you, there is joy before the angels of God over one sinner who repents." Matthew 24, "And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other." A couple more. Isaiah 6 says, "Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew." And if there's one thing I'll say about that, I don't want to go too much into what angels look like, because they can look differently. That's a confusing answer. Angels are a mystery to us. I'll also just throw that out there. But sometimes the seraphim, the cherubim, they have strange appearances, to say the least. So they don't always look like us. I think that's fair to say. Jude 6 says, "And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day." So, angels get in trouble. Angels are not above mistakes, which is a whole other conversation. I'm not going to get into all that. But last one, this is a pretty good one. Revelation 19. "Then I fell down at his feet to worship him. But he said to me, 'You must not do that. I am a fellow servant with you and your brothers who hold to the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.'" So that's an angel speaking to John there in Revelation. Very, very unique scene there as well. But we don't have enough time to go into angels. But if you got any angel comments or questions, good luck. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. We can discuss it at the end. But so Mark lays out Mary Magdalene at the tomb a little bit different. I just kind of want to read this, then we'll go back into Mary Magdalene at the tomb. Now when he rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. Again, giving her backstory as who she was, because she's just not mentioned throughout the Gospels as much. Luke mentions her a few times, and we're going to talk about that. But she's there. She has this encounter with the angels, and then she turns around. And Jesus is standing there, as if he had been there before unnoticed to some degree. Maybe he was off at a distance and he's been closing in. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to assume, because everything you're going to do here is somewhat assuming. The second half of that verse, though, super interesting, because she doesn't know that it's Jesus. Very interesting. We will see that there is a pattern of everyone who encounters the resurrected Jesus. They have a hard time understanding who he is at first. It's very good. That's where we're going to get into opinions here in a minute. But so she turns around, probably with the same intent that she had with the 2 angels, to find out where his body is. Well, do you know where Jesus is? Is kind of her attitude still at that point, If you study the different resurrection appearances of Jesus, and the fact that he's unrecognizable at first to the people who he was the closest with is very strange. Mary Magdalene had been with Jesus since Luke 8. Luke 8 is talking about those who were with him at that point. It's early Galilean ministry, public ministry. She's named among the women who was traveling with him. We read it last week, and I'm going to read it one more time because we actually come back to it here in a little while. But Luke 8, 1 through 3. Soon afterwards, he went through the cities and villages, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. And there were 12, and the 12 were with him, and also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's household manager, and Susanna, and many others who provided for them out of their means. Provided for them out of their own means. That's pretty interesting, I think, but we'll get to that. But she knows Jesus intimately. She has been traveling with him for at least a year and a half, let's just say, every day, all day long. It's not like the way we are with people now, where we have all these 2,000 distractions. When you're traveling with somebody for a year and a half in those days, it's 24/7, all day long. You know, you hear when they get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. You know, like you hear that everything is very personal. You know, it's far less distractions than what we have. But it's similar to the road to Emmaus with the disciples. When here in a few minutes, when the disciples are fishing out in the boat in the Sea of Galilee, they see him on the shore. They're talking to him. They don't know who he is. It's very strange, very strange. There's a lot of popular opinions on different things, and I'll go through those a little bit, but I have my own. A very popular opinion is that Jesus has scars all over his face. It says he was unrecognizable to some degree. Isaiah 53 even says that. But his face is just covered in scars, which is, pretty understandable. My own opinion, man, I like that he looks a little different. So I give him, maybe he's clean shaven, maybe his hair's cut. I don't know. I don't even mind. This is going to be crazy to say, but I don't even mind if somebody said he appears much older, maybe even with gray hair. I'm not in charge of anything. I don't know what he looked like, but I will say he clearly looks different to the point with the people who see him don't feel that he looks the same. Anybody have their own thoughts on that? I don't think he's taller. I'll say that, but go ahead.
I think it's that he looked more angelic, so maybe
Glorified
that
body.
threw him instead of him looking different. Maybe he looked different in that way, like.
I think about it like if Hunter came in next week and he was clean shaven, everybody's gonna double take at him because he's looked that way for like a year. You know what I'm saying? Like, be like, what? Oh, that's Hunter. Okay. But like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like that is, for men, is like one of the most distinct differences when you go from a bit, because Jesus had a long beard. It would have been extremely long to us.
Extremely long hair too. because
Extremely
they
long
say,
hair. He would have. Many people will tell you that he took the Nazarite vow, and he would not have cut his hair or his beard his whole life.
That's what.
So it's very
He
long.
went to hell to fight the devil. He probably got it all singed
Yeah, it just cinched right off. Well, he was in the fiery furnace and it didn't hurt him then, so I don't know, but maybe. But he has a different appearance, which is okay. It's okay to, wonder a little bit. I will tell you this: nobody conclusively knows, So it's okay to. I don't feel like it's something to worry about,
I feel like if he would have had the scars, they would have seen them before, from like where he was beat and stuff, but then they went and cleaned him up. They would have seen the marks on his face.
That's pretty good. In those days,
Why they felt they didn't recognize him, because they saw how he was beat.
okay.
And now he shows up and
And he's clean again.
Yeah.
Maybe. No, that's good too. Maybe in those days, if you end up dying, they wouldn't have treated your scars. So those open wounds would have just been open, Maybe he's just, I don't know, There's all kinds of different things. I don't know. I don't mind the fact that, like you said, like he's kind of more angelic, we'll call it, or heavenly looking. I don't mind he has gray hair. That's fine with me.
well, they say that we would have a body like him.
I think he would be like from
Yes.
4 or 5 states, so we're not gonna be all scarred up.
It's true. Yeah. I don't know.
But he shows his scars on his hands.
Oh, yeah.
and
Mhm.
So he does have scars on him.
Once for
does.
poor Thomas, but say he gets commonly referred to as doubting Thomas, but how many of them that did see him doubted it was him? I mean, they're all guilty of it.
100%. Yeah. Except for John. John's pointing out he's not. But everybody else.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's very interesting. His appearance is very interesting. I don't really have a conclusive answer. I'm open to anything besides he's taller or shorter. He's not taller or shorter. But anything else, I think I'm open to. It's very unique, his post-resurrection appearances. He is not a spirit. I think that's one thing to keep in mind. He is flesh and bones as he's standing there. He is in the same skin to some degree, like Chrissy just said, because he's going to be touched by Thomas,
I think I've been envisioning it wrong. I think I've been envisioning more like a spirit or a see-through person.
Yes, no, that's in many
he
books.
looks like himself, but I think I'm envisioning him more like a, I don't.
He's like, oh, with the radiance.
Maybe,
Yeah, no, that's okay. Like the angels that she just saw.
Yeah.
Um,
I've always just,
I
I
hate
don't know.
Huh.
but.
Well, that's a strange thought.
When she passed away, she had Bell's palsy, where her side of her face was all completely drawn up on one side.
Mm-hmm.
And she was in a fetal position for a week, well over a week. She was in a fetal position in the bed, well over a week, it's about a week. But when I went into the bedroom and uncovered my mama, my sister and I did, and she was laid straight out. Her Bell's palsy was completely gone. She was smiling, a beautiful smile, and had her hands crossed. You know, in other words, what I'm saying is, I think it was just a relief of the stress.
Mm-hmm.
Was a lot of it. That,
He had a lot of stress,
that
that's for
it
sure.
Just completely changed her appearance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Could be.
What if they didn't recognize him because he was scarred from carrying a cross with the crown of thorns, and, you know.
Well, his weight is a good thing to bring up, because he was extremely skinny, you know, and maybe, like you said, maybe he's back to a normal, healthy BMI. You know, I don't know, but he appears normal at this point. You know, like his normal weight would have been. You know, that's a pretty good point. I don't know. Yeah, it's a mystery. I don't have the right answer. In Luke 24, he says, "See my hands and my feet. That it is I myself. Touch me and see. For a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have." So he definitely does. One thing I was going to say about that, so often all of our early childhood ways we see the Bible are in those old children's Bible drawings, or the pictures as you're flipping through, even like the early teen versions, you know, like you're flipping through and it has like Noah's Ark and the giraffes are smiling, you know, and like that's the way we see things. So like in many of those scenes, he's standing there to Mary Magdalene. He's only got like half of his clothes. He has no shirt on. He's of course a big ripped, you know, dude. But like he, that's kind of the way we carry that on and see him, which is very, I don't know. It's unfortunate, maybe, you know. But his body still has the marks of his wounds. In verse 20, when he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples were glad that they saw the Lord. And to contrast the whole spirit thing, in chapter 21, if we ever get there, he's going to not only cook food, but he's going to eat the fish. So it's a mystery, you know. It's very
It's so important to pay attention to the details. You just read that about the flesh and bone.
Mhm.
I've heard that verse, I don't know how many times, but one, I've always paid more attention to the scars and
Right.
not that part.
He rules out, "I'm not a spirit." He
I've
says it
just,
himself.
For whatever reason, not paid attention to that part, and
Mhm.
that says so much about his appearance.
Yeah. But
It kind of counteracts that, just
no, hold on.
spirit.
But to make it more confusing, in the next section, he's going to appear in a room that is locked. He's just going to appear there.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
It's the
So
spirit
let's
part.
we'll just keep it a mystery, you know. But his resurrection appearances definitely have a mystery to them.
It's the same way he appeared to Mary. He just, boom. there
He's
he
just
is.
there, right? Was he already in that garden? Was he? I don't know. You know,
He can do that.
his appearance is
He can
strange.
do that.
The way he can appear is strange. He's God. You know what I'm saying? Like we're trying to limit him into our understanding of science and biology
He
and these
created
kind of
the world.
things.
He can just appear if he wants to.
Exactly. For me, it keeps this weird uncomfortableness to some degree, and this tension each time he appears. You know, everybody's kind of like, whoa, you know, it's very surprising to them. I think John really lays that out pretty well for me. One explanation here of Jesus' body is it's found in 1 Corinthians 15. And it's about as close as most people would say you're going to get to explaining it. But someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body do they come? You foolish person. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And what you sow is not the body that is to be, but a bare kernel, perhaps of wheat or of some other grain. But God gives it a body as he has chosen, and to each kind of seed its own body. For not all flesh is the same, but there is one kind for humans, another kind for animals, another for birds, and another for fish. There are heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of heaven is of one kind, and the glory of the earthly is another. I don't know. I'm still confused, but that's the best explanation according to most scholars. We'll just say. So back to the back and first. Yeah, no, it's different. It's this unique appearance, and all of his unique appearances until he ascends are a mystery. I think that's okay. It's all right. You don't have to understand every verse of every line of the Bible. So it would be nice, but one of these days, you know. So back to verse 15. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you've laid him, and I will take him away." So the stranger, he answers courteously. It's the equivalent of our ma'am. So he is addressing her in a formal way, very courteously. And he asks her two questions. Why are you crying? Why are you overly weeping? And who are you looking for? And after he speaks to her, she still thinks he's the gardener. That's crazy to me. I don't know. Has she completely turned around yet? No. I don't know. There's all kinds of...
Try to wrap your mind around it. I mean, standing there.
I'm trying to put myself in the scene. So here's a couple scenarios which I think kind of work. Why she doesn't know. The glare of the sun's in her eyes. You're going out on a limb with that one, you know. There's tears in her eyes. She's crying. She was temporarily blinded by the glimmering angels. That's another one. And she isn't fully facing him, which I kind of like that one the best. All of them, though, are possibilities, you know. She also responds courteously. He says, "Ma'am." She responds with, "Sir." If you've carried him away. An interesting thing here in what she says, tell me where the body is, and I will take him away. I will take care of this. I will be responsible for this. It goes back to the introduction in Luke where he said, he names them all, and he says, who provided for them out of their own means. She's well off to some degree. I don't know why, but she provided for the band of disciples out of her own means. Mary Magdalene, yeah. Mary Magdalene and those other named ladies.
Yes.
So what she's essentially saying here is, tell me where the body is and I will rebury him out of my own pocket to some degree, which is a very unique thing to say for a woman, you know. So, and then in verse 16, Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned to him, and in Aramaic, she said to him, "Rabboni," which means teacher. So whatever the reason, whenever Jesus says Mary, obviously it's the way he always said it, you know. My own side thought or opinion is, you know, she's from Magdala by the sea, and they obviously have their own dialect, and he's from Nazareth, and they have their own twang or whatever you want to call it from out in Galilee. And the way he says that is so strong that she knows he's from Nazareth. She knows who this is, you know. I like that. I think that works for me. I don't want to... I was going to say it in some funny voice, but it's ridiculous. So I'll just move on. But yeah, Mary? I don't know. You know, like he's got like this southern, you know, thing going on. You know, I don't know.
You're saying it's like a Polk County twang?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's like from Alabama or something. You know, Chattooga County. But but I don't know. You know, it's like you can tell where people are from or not from. You know, I commonly get, "You're not from around here." You know, and so that my favorite response is, "No, I'm from up north. Fort Oglethorpe," you know? And so a long pause, as long of a pause in there as you can, you know? But most people will even say, when I say I'm from up north, they'll say, "That's what I thought." And I'm like, hold on a second, what is you cut? That's like a cut down. Anyway, but she knows his voice. Now, the correct answer, the biblical answer is, it's because his voice is that of the Good Shepherd, which I like that. John told us in chapter 10, to him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls out his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. When he has brought out all of his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. I like that. I mean, that's the $10 answer. She hears his voice, and then says in Aramaic, John lays out there, Rabboni, which means teacher. John is writing this to Greek-speaking readers, and he constantly tells them what the Aramaic is. Aramaic is like the sister language to Hebrew, so they would be above that. Let's just say they wouldn't speak Hebrew. I'm not going to speak this low language like this. So he translates it for them and eventually for us too. He does it over and over. We've talked about the emphasis in different places where he did it. But a very funny thing is the very first time he did it in chapter 1, in verse 38, it's this same thing. And Jesus turned and saw them following him and said to them, "What are you seeking?" And they said to him, "Rabbi," which means teacher. "Where are you staying?" It's the exact same place. It's the exact same words. She says Rabboni, an Aramaic word, which is used twice in the whole Bible. The other times in Mark. She is going back into her same relationship with him, is where she's at with him. She doesn't call him she doesn't say that he's God. Her first thing is she's right back in that same relationship, which brings us to 9:50. I'm out of time. One of the most difficult passages in the New Testament, it has been called. I have read and listened to all kinds of different things. Verse 17 is absolutely uniquely taken 1,000 different ways, I think is fair. The one thing I'll say is I'm not very prepared to discuss this fully. You know what I'm saying? Like this is a long conversation. Another thing I'll say is I don't have a definite answer. I have a lot of other people's answers, and they all work. I just don't know. So my interpretation of this verse is done very humbly, and I'm going to say before we even get started into it, I don't know. Maybe Jeff will come in next week and explain it to us. But Jesus said to her, "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." So all kinds of stuff going on here. The breakdown, the first part there, get up off me. No, touch me not. Touch me not is the KJV. The NIV says, "Do not hold on to me," and the NASB says, "Stop clinging to me." So the scene there is actually, among any Bible scholar, that she is holding on to him. As she turns to him, hears her name, she falls, probably to her face in somewhat of a worshiping type of thing, and she's holding on to his legs. That's kind of the scene that everybody says is going on here. Probably Mary had fallen to her face and grasped him by the feet. She seems to be holding on to him in the present tense here. So it's very commonly taken, I will just say, outside of, let's just say seminary type circles or something like that, that he's saying, "Don't touch my body." Whoa, 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 step back, don't touch me. But that's not really what he's saying. He's really saying, "Let go of me." It's very interesting. Some of the different translations and the wording can be taken so many different ways. "Do not cling to me, for I have not yet," it is the ESV. I don't know. I like, and I've never said this out loud before, but I like the NIV's here. "Do not hold on to me," showing that she's already holding on to me. Let go of me. Stop clinging to me. I will just say, for me, most people take that as, "Don't touch me. I'm not ready yet. I haven't ascended to the Father yet. When I go, I'll come back. Then you can touch me," as in Thomas, just 10 verses later. But that's not really what he's saying here.
I think he's saying, "Don't get used to me being here, because I'm not going to be here physically
Yes.
on earth first."
Yes, that's very good. That's very good.
I wondered that.
Yeah. For me, I try not to worry too much about when he says, "I am ascending." We read it as he's saying it like in this immediate state. "Don't touch me, I'm ascending, and then once I get everything fixed up, everything will be different." But in the same way that he's saying that, he also said, back in chapter 10, "No one takes it from me, but I lay down my life of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down. I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. I lay down my life." Well, he did 9 chapters later. He doesn't at that exact second, you know. So when he says he's doing things, or he's in the process of doing things, you know, my glorification or any of these things, it may not be an immediate thing, you know. So many people, I think, look at in between these two scenes of Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene, and then that night when he appears to the disciples, as in between there, Jesus ascends. And that would not be the correct understanding, according to biblical scholars, let's just say. So, when he's saying he ascends, he's talking about his final woman. His ascension at the end, which we're going to get to. That's what he's talking about. So he's not talking about here before he gets to Thomas. Not trying to be controversial, just trying to say that's kind of the understanding there. Here is a fancier way of saying it than me. The thought then might be paraphrased this way: stop touching me, or stop holding on to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father. I am not yet in the ascended state. So you do not have to hang on to me as if it were I was about to disappear permanently. This is a time for joy and sharing the good news, not for clutching me as if I were some jealously guarded private dream come true. Stop clinging to me, but go and tell my disciples that I am in the process of ascending to my Father and your Father. There's some funny wording in there, but that's a pretty good one. One of my favorite guys that I've used in every study that we've had so far is D.A. Carson. He wrote a full commentary on John, and it is very good. And his words on this are very unique. Not really arguing with that or conflicting with that, but just a hair different. Mary thought that the old relation between her Lord and herself were to be renewed. That old interaction by means of sight, sound, and touch would go on as before. Christ says, the time for this kind of interaction is over. Henceforth, your communion with me will be by faith through the Spirit. This communion will become possible through my ascension to the Father. That's pretty good. I like that one. So here she is going back to what she knew, calling him Rabboni, trying to hug him or to worship him or whatever you want to call it, bowing at his feet. And he's like, that's not the way we're going to do this anymore, to some degree. From this point on, as I'm ascending, we're doing things differently. So he's in the process of ascending to his Father, and his home is no longer on earth. I think that's pretty good. Not that his home ever was, but from this point on, he is an alien to us. And then in verse 18, Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I've seen the Lord, and that he said these things to her. So she goes and does as Jesus told her. She says, I've seen the Kyrios, the Lord, and also tells everything they discussed. She is confessing who he is, not necessarily declaring that he's God at this point. Not that there's anything wrong with, taking that like that, because she does say he's Lord, but it's a different Lord to some degree. But her confession is shown to be in contrast to Thomas, which we're going to get to hopefully next week. But sadly, John doesn't tell us their reaction, which I find very unique. Scholars don't think that they reacted any differently than they do in Luke, where Luke tells us in Luke 24, in returning from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and all the rest. So there's more than just 11 there. Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women who were with them, who told these things to the apostles. But these words seemed to them as idle tale, and they did not believe them. So that part in Luke there sets a whole different scene for me. When in John they see that his body's not there, they go tell John and Peter, and then they run. But we don't really see the whole scene of they actually tell all of them, not just the 11, but the other ones also, and all of them don't believe, and just the 2 race to the tomb. It's kind of sad. How did they respond to her information? That she passes on, that she actually encountered him. it's not really known. John doesn't record it. But we will pick up next week with the disciples back in the upper room, closed up, hiding, because of the Jewish authorities. I don't want to go into that too much, but anybody got any thoughts on anything? Thoughts on anything? It's a little too general. Anybody have any thoughts on the angels or the resurrection or the body of Jesus? Or some, man, verse 17 is very. I read so many different ways that people read all of that. It's very strange. How many correct views there are? Let's just say that's a pretty good one.
No, but I've just learned today that he's flesh and bone too. I
Yes.
really did not pay attention
Mhm.
to that, and I've heard it, I don't know how many times. For whatever reason, sometimes we don't just really pay attention to every single thing when we're hearing common verses. And it's so important to really listen and look at it. I don't know.
Mhm.
So I think that's a nice little revelation I've had today, a different
If
visual.
he were somewhat of a spirit, his body would have still been in the tomb. I imagine. I don't really know how the whole spirit
So it's
from
his-
body
yeah,
to
it's his
spirit thing works.
resurrected body, we
Right.
will get a new body.
Mhm.
So, it's a lot to think about.
It is. I don't have very good explanations on some of it, but
And I do think it was sort of we know it was different, but like he could come into the room. So that's what always made me think of him more as a spirit, that
Mhm.
part. So it is different, I don't know.
no, it's something. From this point on, though, when he's there, it is a mystery to everyone beside him. Everyone who sees him, and he appears to all kinds of different groups of people multiple times. So it's very unique. Anybody else?
His main disciples didn't, you said just 2 ran to the tomb. Do you really believe his main disciples didn't believe her? Or do you think they were just sort of, I don't know, that's hard for me
Mhm.
to think that they didn't all.
Sometimes you just gotta see it for yourself.
It's true.
It's not a matter of believing or disbelieving it.
Mm-hmm.
But only
I've
2
not seen
ran
it
to
with my
see.
own eyes.
Is that
I
what
think
you're
the
saying?
problem sometimes is once you've seen it with your own eyes, you'd have to then see what else happens to it. You know what I mean? For us who have not seen any of these things, it's so much easier, I think, to accept that, now if we had been with him and seen the persecution of the Jews and this whole everybody's trying to get him, then they get him and then he dies, I think in our brains it would be finalized. There would be a closure there. It would be hard to go back from that point. But us reading 2,000 years later, it's much easier to accept the whole thing. I think. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. It's a very difficult
It would
time.
definitely be easier. He's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're expecting me to eat that somebody's arose from the dead?
Mm-hmm.
That would be a tough pill to swallow. I'd have to, at a minimum, see it with my own eye.
Mhm.
And like Doubting Thomas, I'd have to poke those holes.
Yep. Yep. He gets the
Bad thing
opportunity.
is that 12 has seen it already. He raised Lazarus, so they've seen it.
That's very true. They've seen actually multiple people resurrected in different ways. Yeah.
They even had the ability to.
Mm-hmm.
do-
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
So, that's true.
That is true. I mean, they've seen miracles on miracles, and
Yes,
like.
but how many of them was with him when Lazarus was resurrected?
I think they all were.
They
I think they
all
all were. Another thing I'll say, which I'd like to defend the disciples, because they seem like they're just like, well, how have they not got all this together yet? But like for me, I love to think of them as they're very young. They're all, let's say, 20 and younger. That's just the way I look at them.
And
It makes sense with their questions and stuff for me.
I always thought, in my mind, I always pictured them older until the chosen, and I love it that now I have a younger view of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. They're not just figuring out things about Jesus; they're figuring out things about life in general. Exactly. Tara and I were talking late last night, and she was saying, "How did they not know this? Like, how do they not know about these prophecies, and different things, and they're like, oh, this is obviously him. But for me, first off, just defending them, most of these guys were fishermen, at least 4 are named fishermen. One's a tax collector. They don't spend all day reading the Bible. Reading the Bible also was a much more difficult thing in those days. You didn't have your own personal Bible. It was a whole process to be able to get to one, Speaking on behalf of the women, why did the women not know? Women didn't really read in those days. It would have been read to them in the synagogues, but that's about the extent of it. In the show The Chosen, they're teaching them as they're going along to read and write to some degree, which is would have been very controversial.
They do quote a lot of scripture that they've learned.
They do, which is true.
Very impressive.
Right.
That I feel like in a way they were required to learn and they need more, memorize more.
Which we can also, but if someone were to ask us, what are the 330 prophecies of Jesus in the Old Testament? What are the Messianic prophecies? We'd have a hard time. Maybe we could say like 7 or something, but there's a lot of them that are very difficult, So to expect all those people to have that knowledge also is, you're putting a lot on them,
The most beautiful thing about the disciples is they are people. They're just regular people like us, and we would have reacted like one of those.
Very
that's the
regular.
whole point.
Yep.
Like he said, have to touch Thomas. That one of us. If we were one of the 12, there would be one doing that, and we would be reacting the same way, I think.
Absolutely. We look at Abraham or anybody else in the Old Testament, Gideon, in the exact same way. We put these expectations. Well, you've talked to God. How are you not just like everything's A+ from this point on? Because they're just as messed up as we are, Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Think about.
That's good. So, all right. So next week, Jesus is going to appear to the disciples and maybe to Thomas. We'll see if we get that far. So we're talking all about belief next week, and do we believe like John or do we believe like Thomas to some degree? I don't know. It's very difficult. And Thomas gets a bad rap. I don't know if we're going to get into that next week, but we're going to explain that at some point. So, anybody have anything you want us to pray for? I know many people are out sick. The Reddens. Surgery tomorrow. In Cartersville?
At work.
Oh, okay, that's better. That Cartersville one's I think that's a little sketchy.
It's a lot better.
Unless somebody works there, then I love that place. I'm just kidding. But that's funny. All right. The whole time I felt like Larry's like the principal over there, and he's like, no, that's not good. He's like in the seat of authority over there. Yeah, exactly. It looks much nicer than over here. He's got his arms rested. Anyway, that's funny. All right, we'll have a quick prayer, and then we'll head out to the sanctuary. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for bringing us in here this morning. We ask that you watch over our service this morning. Just bring us to a point of worship. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
I've got to say hello to a stranger, a big person. Hey, how are you?
All right.
I'm gonna pull one into it.
Yeah. I was actually thinking,